Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is July 23rd. Late July is when I start looking at my herbs a little differently. A lot of it has started to bolt, which means it's not always good for dinner, although I take the cuttings anyway because it's there. And once I start cooking, I don't want to run to the store. Honestly, I don't always notice a difference. Bolting is supposed to make herbs taste bitter, but I rarely run into an issue. Maybe that says more about my cooking or my taste buds. I have no idea. But I seem to whittle down the variety of herbs in my kitchen garden a little more each year, focusing mostly on my favorites. There's basil, of course. I love to make pesto. Although this year, I petered out and only made 2 batches in June. It's not just the heat. I think the smoke finally did me in. And maybe that's okay. There's lavender, which I love. Every year, I vow to plant more. And every year, I come home with the same 6 plants. It's so expensive. And there's rosemary. Not as pretty as the lavender. And in the garden center, the two often get mixed up. And sometimes I come home with what I think is lavender, and there'll be a little rosemary tucked in the flat. Rosemary is the herb for remembrance, so I always get 6 of those. But the older I get, the more people there are to remember. And when I plant the rosemary, I think of them. Probably what I should do is buy more rosemary. But if I planted one for everyone I've lost, then pretty soon it would be the only herb in my garden. So now I remember more people per plant. People from my side of the family, people on Phil's side, then neighbors and friends, then any new losses over the past year. And then the last plant is for anyone I've forgotten. Sort of the gardener's version of Auld Lang Syne. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day in 1823 that Coventry Patmore, the English poet and critic, was born. He worked at the British Museum, is best known for his narrative poem, The Angel in the House. He used the garden to represent domestic bliss. When his love leaves, the garden becomes a desert. He said, "What should I do? Where should I go? Now she was gone, my love. Life without her was vain and gross. The glory from the world was gone. And on the gardens of the close, as on Sahara, shone the sun." And in 1888, on this day, the American crime writer Raymond Chandler was born. He was a late bloomer, published his first novel, The Big Sleep, at 50, after losing his job during the Depression. The story opens in a greenhouse where there's hundreds of orchids and where Detective Marlowe arrives to investigate. That orchid house stayed with a reader named Jim Endersby, the science historian, and it made its way into his fabulous book, Orchid, A Cultural History, published in 2016. And finally, it was on this day in 1959 that the American landscape architect Martha Brookes Hutcheson died. As a young woman, she walked past Bellevue Hospital in Manhattan and was overwhelmed by the exterior. She said it was a terrible waste of the opportunity for beauty. The experience spurred her decision to pursue landscape design. She created Murchiston Farm with her husband. It became a laboratory for her gardens. She argued in her book, The Spirit of the Garden, that everyone deserves a garden, not just the wealthy. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, The Pleasure Garden by Ann Scott James and Osbert Lancaster. We're near the end of Old Books and Classics Week here on the Daily Gardener, and today's book is a delight. The Pleasure Garden is a history of British gardening, from Roman Britain to the modern patio, written by Anne Scott James and illustrated by her husband, the celebrated cartoonist Osbert Lancaster. Anne was a classical scholar at Oxford. She edited Harper's Bazaar, wrote for the Daily Mail, and eventually gave herself over entirely to gardens, including a much-loved book on the making of Sissinghurst. First published in 1977, this book moves through 2,000 years, from the courtyard gardens of Roman villas to Tudor knot gardens to the great landscape parks of Capability Brown to Miss Jekyll and her Surrey borders to the cottage garden and finally the suburban patio. Anne noticed what every garden historian eventually notices, that British garden fashion had come full circle. She loved the cottage garden most. She said it was a bastion of tradition, a sanctuary for plants, trembling on the verge of extinction. Osbert's drawings are funny and learned in equal measure, the work of a man who clearly spent a lot of time in gardens and was very amused by what he found there. The Pleasure Garden is a classic, and it's a most delightful way to spend a Thursday afternoon. And finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day in 1781 that the English botanist William Burchell was born on the outskirts of London. He grew up in his father's plant nursery, trained at Kew, became a fellow of the Linnean Society, and fell deeply in love with the neighbor girl, Lucia Green. When his parents disapproved, he fled to St. Helena, 10 years before Napoleon arrived there, and he built a place where he and Lucia could be together. 2 years later, in 1807, with her parents' blessing, she sailed to him. When her ship docked in James Bay, William stood at the pier and watched Lucia walk down the gangway on the arm of her fiancé, Captain Dodds. They had fallen in love on the voyage. But William never fell in love again. Instead, he gave himself to plants. He designed an extraordinary ox wagon, part home, part laboratory, part library, and spent 4 years crossing southern Africa at the speed of a walking man. He gathered more than 63,000 specimens, the greatest collection ever made by a single person on that continent. And when he passed the valley above Cape Town, he said it was the most beautiful place he'd ever seen. A century later, that exact spot became the Kirstenbosch National Botanic Garden. William published his masterpiece, Travels in the Interior of Southern Africa, and then creatures began to be named for him. Burchell's zebra, a kukul, a starling, a plant genus, an army ant, and even briefly, the white rhinoceros. He made one last collecting trip to Brazil, and after 5 years, he came home to his sister Anna in England and never left again. For 30 years, he organized his discoveries, worked in the old family nursery, and slowly withdrew from the world until the loneliness finally caught him. In the spring of 1863, 4 months before his 82nd birthday, he left. Anna found him in the garden. She kept on loving him, retracing all of his adventures as she packed up the pressed plants and the seeds, the manuscripts and drawings, and the 20,000 insects, each penned and labeled by hand. Then she sent them to their new homes at Kew and Oxford, ensuring that nothing William found would be lost to time. Today, whenever I see a zebra, that quiet, striped animal named for William Burchell, I always picture him as that young man standing there by the sea, waiting for his life to begin. That was William Burchell, born on this day in 1781. His plants and papers are at Kew. His insects and drawings are at the Oxford University Museum of Natural History. And the Kirstenbosch National Botanic Garden sits in the valley he called the most beautiful place he'd ever seen. Today's book was The Pleasure Garden by Anne Scott James, illustrated by Osbert Lancaster. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.